Good evening, everyone. Before we get started, I'm going to ask everyone, as a courtesy, to silence your cell phones. And we'll get started with our meeting. Welcome to the Orange County School Board's Rule Development Workshop, which has been scheduled tonight for the purpose of discussing Board Policy ADC, Tobacco-Free Schools and Facilities. Board members are in attendance both in person or telephonically, so we're going to begin with a roll call. Brief announcement, Chair Jacobs cannot be with us tonight, but I know that she will be watching and participating. So roll call. Member Gallo.
Present, Madam Chair.
Member Lopez.
Good afternoon.
Vice Chair Gould.
Present. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Dr. Gordon. Do we have Dr. Gordon? All right, we'll work on getting Dr. Gordon connected. Dr. Castor-Dental.
Good afternoon.
And Member Byrd.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. One more moment for Dr. Gordon.
And Vice Chair, I am present. Or Acting Chair, I'm sorry, Acting Chair, I'm present.
Thank you. Who is that? Who did we forget?
Sorry, this is Chair Jacobs.
Oh, Chair Jacobs, you are with us. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for letting
absolutely.
me know.
And as soon as we're done with roll call, if I could make a motion to, because I don't think you're formally acting as chair today, so if I could make that motion.
All right, your motion is recognized. Is there a second?
Second. This is
Thank you, Vice
Vice
Chair
Chair Gould.
All right, we will have a roll call. Is that Dr. Gordon I hear? No? All right, we'll proceed with a vote on making me active chair for the evening. Member Gallo?
Aye.
Member Lopez?
Aye.
Vice Chair Gould?
Aye.
Dr. Gordon? All right, Dr. Castor-Dental?
Aye.
Member Byrd?
Aye.
And Chair Jacobs?
Aye.
And I also vote in the affirmative. That motion passes. Thank you. We will take just a moment, as we always do, as is our practice, to have a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. The school board will only be hearing public comments on the proposed revisions to Board Policy ADC this evening. Because this is not a regularly scheduled school board meeting, there will be no pre-agenda period in which the public normally addresses the school board on germane topics that are related to the work of the board. Should you wish to address the school board on another topic, please do so at the next regularly scheduled school board meeting, October 13, 2020. In order to provide governmental transparency and reasonable opportunities for the public to access and participate in the decision-making process, new protocols were established to comply with various emergency executive and administrative orders entered by federal, state, and local government entities, including, but not limited to, the governor's executive orders and emergency executive order issued by the mayor of Orange County. The protocols were designed to allow the school board to continue to perform essential functions in a manner consistent with law and board policy while keeping our citizens and employees safe. The opportunity for the public to participate in this meeting to provide public comment on board policies aforementioned is as follows. Members of the public could provide public comment via email for the school board's consideration at this rule development workshop by 5 p.m. on Monday, October 5. No emails were received at this time. Emails received would be a part of the permanent record in an ordinary circumstance. public comment in person. For members who wish to attend in person, they are directed to fill out a comment card located in the lobby outside of the school board chambers and turn it over to the school board services representatives. I don't believe we have anyone scheduled to speak in person or on the phone at this time.
We do not, that is correct.
Thank you. So now I will turn the meeting over to Dr. Jenkins for discussion on board policy ADC.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. It is a very brief policy for your first consideration this afternoon, policy ADC, tobacco-free schools and facilities. I'm going to ask General Counsel to make any comments before we proceed.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. This time I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Kopesky. She is going to go through the proposed revisions to policy ADC, tobacco-free schools.
Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Enfall. I do have my mask on. If the people who are on the phone could let me know if they could hear me, I'll leave it on. If not, then I'll take it off so you can hear me better.
Members of the board on the phone, can you hear Ms. Kopesky?
I can hear her.
I can hear her.
Yes, I can hear her.
All right, let's proceed. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Tonight we will be reviewing policy ADC, tobacco-free schools and facilities, as Ms. Colbert stated previously. Our agenda this evening is an overview of the policy, timeline of dates, summary of actions, proposed revisions, next steps, and then questions and discussions from the board. The purpose of the revisions and or creation of this policy is to provide a uniform and systematic method for procurement, assure compliance with all applicable federal, state laws, Florida State Board of Education rules, board policies, administrative rules, procedures, and guidelines, and to promote transparency and accountability in the expenditure of public funds and the use of public resources. Our tentative schedule is as follows. I presented to Cabinet on September 14th, 2020. We did not have a work session for this policy. The Rule Development Workshop is tonight, October 6th. And if the board approves it, it will go to the October 27th, 2020 school board meeting and it'll become effective upon approval. The purpose of policy ADC for the revision is that it's being revised to provide updated information regarding tobacco use and vaping. Action summaries include revisions have been made to the existing policy language to include legislative updates, content, formatting, and terminology edits consistent with statutory language. In addition, the last time this policy was revised or was before the board was in 2011, and that's well before the vaping popularity we see in our youth today. So this is a good time to revise and update this policy and to address the increase in tobacco and or vaping use with our students. Although there's not a specific model policy that addresses tobacco and vaping use, smoking and vaping is prohibited by any person under the age of 18 in, on, or within 1,000 feet of school property, and school districts are permitted to further restrict smoking on property under Chapter 386 Florida statutes. Many of the recommended changes I will present tonight come from the local American Heart Association chapter, CDC recommendations for tobacco policy, Tobacco-Free Florida, and tobacco prevention for K-12 educators, in addition to Florida statutes and State Board of Education rules. So the first proposed change is to the title. The current title of the policy is Tobacco-Free Schools and Facilities. And in order to be in compliance with the NEPN classification index, which is how we name all of our policies, I'm proposing to change it to tobacco-free schools. The purpose of the policy, in our current policy, it says that the Orange County School Board shall provide a tobacco-free environment for all students, staff, faculty, school volunteers, contracted vendors, and school visitors on its property. The proposed language would add a statement recognizing that the use and promotion of tobacco products, including electronic smoking devices, is a health, safety, and environmental hazard to students, staff, members of the public, contracted vendors, and visitors. The definition section in our current policy, it only defines tobacco. but the proposed policy revisions will include several definitions, which I'll go over in just a moment. But those definitions will be for terms such as anytime, board property, gift, retail tobacco shop, school-sponsored event, secondhand smoke, smoking, tobacco, tobacco industry, tobacco-related products, vape or vaping, and vapor-generated electronic smoking device. Effective time and date, this was a recommendation from the American Heart Association and Tobacco Prevention, and it just means anytime. Anytime means 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 or 366 for those leap years, days a year. The definition of board property, we already have in our current policy under prohibited uses a section that talks about where it's prohibited to use tobacco products. So instead of having that in the prohibited use section, I added it to the definition section since it's used throughout the policy. So basically this is just moving that up and classifying it as board property. A gift, this would be a new definition, and it means anything that is accepted by a donee or another on the donee's behalf, or that which is paid or given to another for or on behalf of a donee, directly or indirectly or in trust for the donee's benefit. Gifts may include, but are not limited to, purchases, payments, distributions, loans, advances, transfer of funds or disbursement of money or anything of value. And that definition comes from Rule 34-13.210 of the Florida Administrative Code. A retail tobacco shop, this would also be a new definition, and this is any enclosed indoor workplace dedicated to or predominantly for the retail sale of tobacco, tobacco-related products, electronic smoking devices, and accessories for such products. And that definition comes straight from Statute 386.203. School-sponsored event means any event sponsored by the board and/or Orange County Public Schools that occurs on or off board property. School-sponsored events include, but are not limited to, sporting events, field trips, dances, and theatrical productions. Another new definition would be secondhand smoke. This one also comes from statute, section 386.203, and it is known as environmental tobacco smoke means smoke emitted from lighted, smoldering, or burning tobacco when the smoker is not inhaling. Smoke emitted at the mouthpiece during puff drawing, and smoke exhaled by the smoker. Another definition for smoking just in general also comes from statute 386.203, and it means inhaling, exhaling, burning, carrying, or possessing any lighted tobacco product. The next definition for tobacco, this is a recommended definition from the American Heart Association and the tobacco prevention. We also had this language already in our policy, so all the examples you'll see we already did have, but I combined it with the recommended definition. And the new portion would be tobacco means any product containing, made, or derived from tobacco, or that contains nicotine, whether synthetic or natural, that is intended for human consumption, whether chewed, smoked, absorbed, dissolved, inhaled, snorted, sniffed, or ingested, or any component part or accessory of a tobacco product. And then all the examples that follow that were already in our policy. So I just combined them together. The next definition is another recommended definition from the American Heart Association, defining tobacco industry. And that means the manufacturers, distributors, or wholesalers of tobacco product, tobacco-related devices, or electronic smoking devices. The next definition would be for tobacco-related products. This again was a recommended definition from the American Heart Association chapter, and it means items used or needed for smoking or vaping, and includes but is not limited to ashtrays, rolling papers, wraps, pipes, lighters, pods, cartridges, electronic smoking device chargers, or any components, parts, or accessories of tobacco products or electronic smoking devices. So we really tried to encompass a lot of the electronic smoking device objects as well, to really add into this tobacco-free policy to include vaping within that. The next definition would be vape or vaping, and that means to inhale or exhale vapor produced by a vapor-generating electronic device, or to possess a vapor-generating electronic device while that device is actively employing an electronic, a chemical, or a mechanical means designed to produce vapor or aerosol from a nicotine product or any other substance. The term does not include the mere possession of a vapor-generating electronic device. And the last definition that is being proposed to be added is the vapor-generating electronic smoking device or electronic smoking device. And that would mean any product that employs an electronic, a chemical, or a mechanical means capable of producing vapor or aerosol from a nicotine product or any other substance. And then it goes on to give several examples of what an electronic or a vapor-generating electronic smoking device is. And that comes from Section 386.203 Florida statutes. The next section on prohibited uses, we're recommending changing the title from that little subsection from prohibited uses to prohibitions on board property. And then the current policy on prohibited uses is kind of it puts all the sections together. So this is where that board property definition was located previously. So you'll see like anything included within the board property definition will be written here. And the current policy says that it's prohibited in all those areas. So I just moved that up to the definition section. And then in addition, added a no designated area. So the new language would technically remove everything that's written in the current policy, move that to the definition section, and then it would read all uses of tobacco products, tobacco-related products, and electronic smoking devices shall be prohibited on board property at any time. In addition, there shall be no designated smoking areas on board property. Our current policy talks about prohibiting students from possessing tobacco product, paper used to roll cigarettes, lighters, or other smoking paraphernalia at any time while on the property of the board. The prohibition is being updated to include possession, use, consumption, display, promotion, or sale of tobacco products, tobacco-related products, electronic smoking devices, or any item represented to be of said nature. In addition, the prohibition goes beyond the extent of board property to include school-sponsored events, and also prohibits students from wearing clothing or using other items to advertise or promote tobacco products or electronic smoking devices. The next section, the failure to comply section, it includes disciplinary action or other action taken against the violator of the policy. And the proposed revisions to the policy will actually separate the consequences for students, board employees, members of the public, contracted vendors, and visitors. So they're all kind of in their own category in the new proposed policy. There is a reference in the Code of Student Conduct to the Code of Student Conduct in the current version, but it only says the procedures in the code may be modified from time to time. Rather, I propose the following language in order for the policy to be more direct, and that language would be, all students are expected to follow this policy while on board property or attending a school-sponsored event. Violation of this policy shall be considered a violation of the Code of Student Conduct and shall subject the student to disciplinary consequences. And we do have a smoking tobacco violation in the code, so it is one of our offenses that a student can actually receive discipline for. Under the failure to comply section or prohibited uses, the new language that's being added there to add in the board employees and the members of the public, contracted vendors and visitors, and now prohibits everyone from using, consuming, displaying, promoting, or selling, buying any tobacco product, tobacco-related product, electronic smoking device, or any item represented to be of said nature at any time while on board property. This prohibition also applies to school-sponsored events while in the presence of students. This prohibition includes wearing clothing or using other items to advertise or promote tobacco products or electronic smoking devices. Another new section, again, separating out the board employees from that general failure to comply section. And it would read, all board employees are expected to comply with this policy while on board property or attending a school-sponsored event. Violations of this policy shall be considered misconduct in office and may subject the employee to disciplinary action. As for members of the public, contracted vendors, and visitors, they would also be expected to comply with this policy while on board property or attending school-sponsored events. If a member of the public, contracted vendor, or visitor fails to comply with this policy, notification shall be provided to the principal or designee or building administrator for further action, which may include but is not limited to requiring the individual to leave board property immediately. This next section is not in our current policy, but it is a recommendation from the American Heart Association chapter. And it says it shall not be a violation of this policy to possess or display tobacco products, tobacco-related products, or electronic smoking devices if the possession or display is used for the sole purpose to educate students. Board members and members of the public, board employees, members of the public, contracted vendors, or visitors on the harmful effect of smoking or vaping. Advertising gifts from tobacco companies are prohibited. Again, this is not in your current policy, but it is recommended not only by the American Heart Association, but also by the CDC and tobacco prevention. And it would essentially prohibit the advertising of tobacco and tobacco-related products or electronic smoking devices on board property. It also prohibits the acceptance of gifts by the board or board employees from the tobacco industry. The next section would also be under advertising and gifts, and it would read the promotion or advertising of tobacco, tobacco-related products, or electronic smoking devices on board property is prohibited. Again, under the advertising and gifts, which is a new section if adopted, it references board policy KCE, which is our ethics policy. And it says members of the board and board employees shall not solicit or accept any gifts from the tobacco industry or from any retail tobacco shop in conjunction with their time in office or employment with the board. This includes soliciting or accepting gifts on behalf of the board or the district. This prohibition may include, but is not limited to, donations, advertising, promotions, loans, equipment, curriculum, or uniforms. If there is a conflict between this policy and policy KCE, KCE shall apply. Again, that was a recommendation from American Heart Association and tobacco prevention. As it pertains to health education and secession programs, there's currently not a section on that in our current policy, but if we do add it, the proposed language would read, is it important for all students to understand the impacts of smoking and vaping to their health? Pursuant to Florida statutes, State Board of Education rules, and board policy IHAM, entitled Local School Wellness Policy, health education for students is required. In that same section, it would require that students receive tobacco prevention education in health and health-related class and or prevention activities using age-appropriate evidence-based curricula as required by Florida statutes and State Board of Education rules. So we do have substance abuse and tobacco and substance abuse in our health education classes, so we are already required to teach it. This is just basically saying that we're going to do it. And then within that same section, this would allow schools to consult with the Florida Department of Health in Orange County, Florida, and or other appropriate health and allied community-based organizations to provide students and board employees with information and access to support systems, programs, and services to assist with abstaining from the use of tobacco products or electronic smoking devices. The next steps, if approved, would be revisions to internal procedures and training for internal OCPS employees regarding revisions to the policies and new procedures. Dr. Jenkins.
Members of the board, pretty straightforward policy. Certainly have time now to answer any questions or hear your comments so that we may proceed to the next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. First, let me recognize that Dr. Gordon is with us. Good evening, Dr. Gordon. We're glad you're safe.
Good evening.
And we'll proceed with board discussion. We have Vice Chair Gould. You're recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for also being there tonight, Linda, to handle this on behalf of the chair and myself, since I am not there. I just wanted to say how important this policy is and really kind of lifting it up. We've basically been so COVID focused that we forget that this is an absolute epidemic in our community. When you look at vaping in particular, the use by adults has gone down in the last 5 years, and the youth use has gone up over 15% in 5 years. It's an extraordinarily attractive and addictive and dangerous practice. I'm so glad that in the policy we call out utilizing partners like the health department and other agencies. There are very, very strong programs that have been created through the Primary Care Access Network, the Healthy West Orange, that are meant to reach youth and our through kind of high culture, cartoon, all kinds of things that they've actually created. And I hope we're tapping into those resources and getting them into the kids' hands, because this is not something we can just use flyers and, you know, a mention in a class to change behavior. It really has to be a movement. So I commend you on clarifying this policy. We have not even begun to see the health implications on the youth, the long-term health implications that we're going to see between lung and throat and all kinds of damage from this vaping. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Gould. Dr. Castor-Dental, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And great job, Sarah. The revised policy is so much easier to understand, and it's much more thorough. I appreciate it. You did a great job. I can't wait to see what all the policies look like after you go through them all. All 1,000 of them. First, this is such a problem. It's hard to get a handle on for the schools and families, and I think the clarifications will help people understand what we're having to deal with and how serious we are. I had a question about consequences in the code of conduct. Since all of the paraphernalia and everything is involved in this policy, including rolling papers and devices, if a student has rolling papers on them and they are caught on campus, is the consequence the same as if they were found with a vaping device or vaping in the bathroom? Do you know?
So in our Code of Student Conduct, smoking, vaping, and other use of tobacco nicotine products is a level 3L, and the definition is possession, use, distribution, or sale of tobacco, vaping, nicotine products, or items represented to be of said nature. So in my opinion, yes, it would fall under the same offense, because it does say nicotine products or vaping products as well as the tobacco and vaping substances.
Okay, I think those are important for students to also know what those related materials are. I don't know if rolling papers or things like that defined in there.
So it does give some examples, but it says this
Okay.
offense may include, but is not limited to, electronic cigarettes, CBD oil, jewels, vapors, and hookah pens that do not contain THC or any other legal controlled substance.
Okay.
So we could look at adding additional examples there for the code for next year, if that's something the board would like to do.
Not that I know of any occurrence, but I could see that the inclusion of all those paraphernalia I could see someone trying to make the case that those are very different and that the consequences should be different. So just to be prepared is all I'm thinking about. Another question? Do you know what is the status of the Jewel lawsuit? Maybe Ms. Envald has more details.
I was gonna say, I will defer to Ms. Enval on that one.
I can, we actually, the complaint was filed in the United States District Court, Northern District of California, it's the San Francisco Division. Remember we talked about they were all consolidated, and it was filed on behalf of the School Board of Orange County on June 30th, 2020, against Jewel Labs and a number of other subsidiary people, companies, things like that. We are currently in the process of collecting data and preserving data so that we can do that. We are hoping it moved a little bit quicker, but you can imagine some of the recent things have made it move a little bit slower. So other than the fact the complaint was filed and they're still moving forward, I don't have a specific update for you.
Okay, thank you. And one last comment. While you were presenting, I was curious to find out about if there was a relationship between COVID and vaping, and it seems like there is. That Stanford did a study that showed that young people who vape are about 5 to 7 times more likely to be infected by COVID. So that was just published in August. So we might be able to add some of that information to our health classes as well, since we are dealing with COVID.
Great, thank you for looking that up.
Of course, thank you. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great points, Dr. Castor-Dental. And I also want to echo my appreciation for Ms. Kopesky. Great job really bringing this up to date to align with our statutes and providing for all of the new products and paraphernalia that are out there that can harm our students and employees. So great job.
Thank you.
Is there any more school board discussion? I do not see anyone queued up. Dr. Jenkins, is there anything else?
Nothing further, Chair.
Thank you. So we're going to adjourn this meeting in a moment, but we will be reconvening for an executive session. So if there's no more questions or comments, anything from our general counsel? No, then this meeting is adjourned. And we will now call to order a public meeting for an executive session. Pursuant to section 286.0118 Florida statutes, the School Board of Orange County, Florida will meet in an executive session to discuss the pending litigation of Craig Lilly versus Orange County Public Schools, case number 2018CA010784. The statute requires us to open a meeting in the public and then adjourn to our closed executive session. In light of the current circumstances, the board just held a regular school board meeting in person and telephonically, and will now convene in an executive session in person and virtually telephonically. It's estimated that this attorney-client session will take approximately 30 minutes. Those attending the executive session will be Chair Teresa Jacobs, Vice Chair Pam Gould, Angie Gallo, Johanna Lopez, myself, Linda Cobert, Dr. Kat Gordon, Dr. Castor-Dental, Melissa Bird, Dr. Barbara Jenkins, Amy Enval, School Board General Counsel, Sherry Henry, outside counsel, and a court reporter. For those of us attending in person, we will retreat to Conference Room E for the executive session. Once the executive session is over, we will open the door to Conference Room E and reopen the public meeting and then adjourn, since there will be no further public business. The executive session will be recorded by a court reporter, and the proceedings will be transcribed for the record in accordance with Florida statutes. That's it. We are adjourned, and we'll reconvene in Conference Room E. Thank you. Thank you.